evening. This is the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and straight on to the big debate that impacts you, me, and all of us a part of the show and watching television tonight. Because it is death by breath in India's top cities. A recent report by the World Health Organization itself says that 14 out of the 15 most polluting cities in the world are actually right here in India. Move over Delhi, it is Kanpur that tops the global charts, while UP walks away with the dubious distinction of hosting 4 out of the 10 most choking cities. No respite for Mumbaiites as well, as India's financial capital is ranked number 5 in the list of top polluted megacities. The WHO findings are surely a wake-up call for the Modi government, which ironically has been a lot of noise about its Clean India campaign and Swachh Bharat. Experts warn that the government will have to work hard to strike a balance between rapid economic progress and environment protection. Also, there is a lot to learn from China, right, our neighbors across the border, the world's manufacturing engine, with none of its cities finding a mention in the filthy 15 list. In fact, its polluting list is down from a staggering 14 to just 4 now. India's pollution crisis is the topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate tonight. Thank you very much for joining in to the viewers, and we've got a stellar panel to take things forward. Sunita Narayan, Director CSC and environmentalist, joins us right here. Ms. Naini Jayasilan, former Secretary of Environment, joins us. NCR Planning Board. Pallavi Iyer, journalist and author of Choked, Everything You Were Afraid to Know About Air Pollution. We also have Anila Singh, spokesperson of the BJP, and Adil Singh Boparai, spokesperson of the Congress. Now, usually a debate like this doesn't really lend itself to politics, but I think the politicians will have to take this as a wake-up call, and which is why we've got them on board to discuss details of all of that. All right, let's take this straight across to our guests, and joining us on the show is a stellar panel. Let's begin things with Sunita Narayan. And Ms. Narayan, the WHO's report says that 14 out of the 15 top most polluted cities are from India. If this isn't a wake-up call, then I sometimes wonder what really is.
It's a very good question. I think, you know, it's really amazing for me how every winter when the pollution rises, we have some recognition of pollution and there is some action. And I have to say there has been some action in the last 2 years. But then very quickly, we just become so complacent. And the kind of tough decisions we need to take, we just are not prepared to take them. And we must understand this is a pollution emergency. It's a public health emergency. We also must understand that this is not about Delhi anymore. In fact, the biggest takeaway from the WHO report is that it is not about Delhi. Pollution is a crisis across India. The only saving grace is the weather. When there is wind, when there is rain, our pollution levels come down because of the weather. But otherwise, we have to take much tougher decisions and much more aggressive action than we are doing today. And that means industry, that means vehicles, and that means city governance for garbage, for road construction, and all the rest of it.
No, I think you've raised a very important point that what is really coming to our rescue is the weather, and you're absolutely right. You know, when in winters, the weather, when it gets really bad, there are noises made, some intervention, but is that enough? And Pallavi Iyer, I'm going to quickly take this to you. 14 out of the top 15 polluted cities in India, we've established this is an emergency moment. But if, you know, the government needs to rise from, if this is an emergency moment, then doesn't the government need to rise from the slumber, take emergency measures, or do you believe policymakers, and I'm not singling out anybody here, I'm not being partisan here, both at the level of centre and the states, are still waiting for a further deterioration of air quality to find an adequate response to the pollution crisis? This doesn't seem to be on top of the political agenda.
Well, if they don't wake up now, I don't know what will make them wake up. You know, if it doesn't count as a public health emergency to literally have 14 out of the 20 most polluted cities in the world on the list in our country, then you cannot imagine a situation that is worse than this. And particularly if you look and compare it to what the graph has been over the last few years, I remember clearly that this same list in 2013 actually featured 16 Chinese cities in the top 20. This is only, some 5 years ago. And at the time, there were only 2 or 3 Indian cities. And today, we have 14 Indian cities and only 4 Chinese cities. So the role has completely reversed. So this is really like a clarion call for the public health emergency that the country is facing. And time again, we have had reports from, for example, the Health Effects Institute that have shown that ambient air pollution is actually ahead of other risk factors like high cholesterol and high blood sugar in terms of contributing to the national burden of disease in India. So this is really something that can no longer be ignored.
No, I don't think I can agree with you more on the clarion call that's required. And let's take this across to somebody who's been a part of the decision-making process on this entire thing. And Ms. Naini Jayasheelan, it's good to have you on the India development debate. Do you think the magnitude of the problem is yet to ring a bell in the corridors of power? And I'm asking this question with a lot of responsibility because air pollution is a problem that slowly affects people. It's a little invisible of sorts, unlike an agrarian crisis or a farmer suicide or leak of, and none of these problems are small. Let me just tell you, leak of question papers, which are very in your face and which is why on things like air pollution, because it's slow, because it's invisible, there are no visible protests or a chance of having an impact on the hustings that is keeping governments both at the center and the states from addressing the problem at a wartime footing. I mean, if the government can bring upon an ordinance on a whole host of other issues, why not for tackling air pollution?
Well, I think a lot of the sensitization is there at the moment. But the gravity of this situation has not yet been understood by all. And as Sunita had very rightly said, this is really an emergency. It's a public health emergency. It's a wake-up call. And the very fact that 14 out of 15 cities, top cities of India are in this list, doesn't speak very well of the concrete action that we have been so far able to take. And this is actually data compounded based on annual averages of 2016, which I fear that if you take the AQI index, which includes all the other pollutants like sulfur dioxide and others, you would be having a situation which would be probably much worse than what the ranking is at the moment. And mortality due to, there is no doubt that mortality due to exposure of PM 2.5 is extremely high. And if you notice, this is really now becoming a very acute problem of the whole Indo-Gangetic plain, where Kanpur tops the list. So this is really a clarion call, and as I said, we are still at the stage where we are sensitizing people, but concrete action has really not been taken at the ground level.
All right, that's a fair point indeed, and I think the Indo-Gangetic part of the whole debate awaits us, and we'll go back and talk about that in just a moment. But I'm going to get quick opening comments from all our speakers here, and let's go across to the politicians on the show. And Anila Singh, you represent the Treasury benches here. You represent the BJP. You know, there is this need for a clarion call. Our experts on the show, whether it's Sunita Narayan, whether it's Ms. Naini Jayasheelan or Pallavi Iyer, they all believe that this is an emergency. Is there at one level a complete lack of will on the part of the government to acknowledge the magnitude of the problem? This doesn't get the same attention that a Swachh Bharat gets, that a Make in India gets, or things, you know, those blitzkrieg slogans get. This problem is huge. Is there lack of acknowledgement on how big the problem really is?
Indeed, the problem is threatening, life-threatening, and BJP government, and especially if I talk about our leadership, Prime Minister of this country as well, like everybody understands that how huge this problem is, and we all can't forget the Paris summit, what Prime Minister said, that And truly, Bharatiya Janata Party government, NDA government, I'll say, has been continuously working on it, that how to control the air pollution, not only the air pollution, other pollutions as well. And we have taken so many stringent steps also regarding it. But you know, government, definitely government is doing its work and doing it very well. But it is like government standalone can't do everything. Like contribution has to come from all sides. Like if we talk about about the stubble burning, then definitely awakening programs are there. Then alternative techniques are also being given to farmers. But at the same time, like farmer has to understand this thing, that stubble burning really causes huge air pollution. And like there are many factors. This government is encouraging alternative fuels. Yeah, I'll say that so that the air quality can be improved. We are encouraging electric vehicles as well, and we have increased many folds in network of roads so that the traffic jams are not there. And who can deny the fact about the Bharatmala and Sagarmala? See, even the Ujjwala Yojana,
Okay.
when Pradhan Mantri brought this Yojana, everybody mocked at him. Now today we can say that yes, at least if we talk about the air quality in the rural area, in the houses, if even not only in the rural houses, if we talk about the urban area as well, air quality in houses very bad. And who is the main sufferer? Women are the main sufferer. So Ujjwala Yojana has really given a good impact on that.
Okay,
in
Anila,
controlling the air quality and giving good help to rural women.
Okay.
See, there are so
Anila
many
Singh-
steps I can
Singh-
go and on and on. But
Okay.
definitely government is doing. But I think so.
Yeah.
It can't be a standalone effort.
Okay. No, I absolutely appreciate that point, that this just can't be a government thing. This has to be a societal thing. This has to be a consciousness thing as well. I completely agree with you on that. But what I disagree with you on is that, and I completely agree with you that a whole host of actions have been taken, whether it's electric vehicles or biofuels or the roads that are being constructed. Where I disagree is that this is not being done on war footing. This does not have the same attention that a problem of this magnitude should have. But let me get the other politician on the show, and Adar Singh Boparai. I do hope you won't make it a BJP problem. You're not going to say this is a creation of Mr. Modi or the treasury benches, because this has, we've landed where we have due to decades of neglect, due to decades of being in denial, and your party has to be blamed as much as perhaps the BJP. The Congress campaign over the past 6 months is harping on criticism of the Prime Minister, allegations of wrongdoing. Why don't we have the Congress? Why don't we have Mr. Gandhi talk about air pollution? We've seen Kejriwal and Khattar host talks to address air pollution, but why was Amrinder Singh missing amidst this all? So I'm just saying the magnitude of the problem is perhaps being denied by the opposition as well.
Well, Supriya ji, first and foremost, the Congress party has adopted a very bipartisan position on this issue. It is a very challenging issue. It affects 1.3 billion Indians, and I think we shouldn't see it through a political prism, and I completely agree with you on that point. Now, coming to the core issue, we need to move beyond rhetoric and singing paeans of the Prime Minister to actual delivery. We urge the Government of India to come up with a comprehensive roadmap, and let me assure on behalf of the Congress party that we will support such a campaign to clean our environment. Point number one. Point number two, let's be very clear, nobody will come and make in India and invest in India if they can't breathe fresh air. I think there will be unanimity on this aspect on this panel. Now let's take two specific issues which have been raised in this debate. The first is the Ujjwala scheme. Now the problem which is arising is with the replacement of those LPG cylinders. Now even if people in rural India get those cylinders, the replacement process is extremely slow and lax, and that, what eventually leads to is that the rural households are again switching back to the earlier mode of cooking through the chula. So this is something which the government needs to address, the replacement process. Number two is the stubble burning system. Now, we all know the reality of the Indian farmer today. They're going through a debt crisis. Farmers are not getting the kind of remuneration which they should. So that is why the Congress party had urged this government to subsidize equipment for better stubble management. All what it requires, at least for the northern states, is about 3 to 4,000 crore rupees by the government of India, which would encourage farmers to adopt a cleaner mode for stubble disposal. If that's done, I think stubble burning to a great extent can be addressed. We need the government of India to come up with a comprehensive plan, and this is something which affects us all. So therefore, to say that X is not serious or Y is not serious will not help the cause. Now, Varanasi has been named in these top 20 cities, which happens to be the constituency of the Prime Minister. So therefore, please address these issues on a war footing. The opposition will support you, and let's move towards a cleaner India. I think that's the real core issue here today before us.
Right. Okay. I'm really glad that there is a bipartisan approach to tackling pollution, and this needs to be done on a war footing for all of us to breathe fresh, clean air. But I'll go across to the experts once again, and Ms. Narayan, coming to you. You know, there's been so much written and said about how every unit of rise, as far as the PM is concerned, leads to a dip of about 11.9% in S&P 500. This is National Economic Bureau research numbers, 1.9% rise as far as volatility in the markets are concerned. But as someone who specializes in this space, I really want to ask you a very blunt, simple question. You know, air pollution is not just one problem. It impacts the economy, it impacts economic activity. How, will you just explain for the benefit of viewers, how does this derail the Indian dream of a $10 trillion economy? And have we woken up to the impact of this menace a tad too late?
See, I think we have to some extent woken up to the menace. Let's talk about what needs to be done. And I think, you know, quite frankly, the problem today is that we are not realizing, as I said earlier, the scale and the need for aggression. So, and as you're a business channel, let me talk directly to the fact that our Indian industry is basically still having to be pulled and dragged towards cleaner fuel. I mean, there are three big challenges that India faces. And if you look at what China has done and what we need to do. One, we need to make sure that we do not use dirty fuel for combustion. Now, it's taken us a good 1 year to fight against petcoke and furnace oil. We've had it banned in NCR, but today industry is using coal and low sulfur diesel for its in its units. It's equally polluting. We have got emission standards after a year's fight for SOx and NOx. The government isn't even beginning to implement it. Industry is arguing it's going to be too expensive for it to bring in pollution control. The fact is, we need to move as much of our industry to the cleanest fuel possible, which is gas at this moment, or electricity. Now, gas is part of GST, and as a result of it, today gas prices are still too uncompetitive, and industry is refusing to take on more and more gas for its combustion. Second, we have thermal power units. China aggressively closed down thermal power units which were running on coal and moved them towards gas. We have a major problem that 2 years ago, the Ministry of Environment and Forests in 2015 issued new standards for emission control for thermal power plants. Those standards were to come in 2017. The Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Power is today arguing that the earliest that they would bring in the standards is 2020 to 2022. At the earliest, 2022 and beyond is what they would like. Ministry of Environment is defending the delay of its own standards, saying, oh, what can we do? Thermal power units don't have the capacity, we don't have FGDs, we cannot order them. I mean, are we serious at all about emission control? Then we come to vehicles. When it comes to vehicles, the fact is, this is the one good thing that the government has done, which shows the aggression, which is that we have advanced BS6 standards in Delhi by 2 years. Now, we have been asking industry, can you not, automobile industry, can we not advance the vehicle technology? Can we not put more restraints on diesel? Can we not do retrofit of the earlier vehicles? We got an order from the Supreme Court to say, let's have all pollution under control certificates will be connected to insurance so that it improves compliance. The Ministry of Surface Transport and Road and Surface Transport is sitting on that, has not moved to get insurance companies to act on it. I don't think we understand the scale as yet. And yet, what we need is clean fuel for combustion. We need deterrence. That's the other thing that China has done. China made pollution control a criminal act. It actually put people in jail. We have the weakest enforcement machinery that you could think of. The pollution control boards don't even know how to catch pollution if it's under their nose.
Sure.
So let's fix this, please.
Okay.
I think it's time we went over all these banal arguments and really got serious. It is a public health emergency.
Oh, absolutely, it is a public health emergency, and you raised a very valid point of China. I plan to discuss that in just a bit from now. But before I come back to you for a follow-up question, I want to draw in Ms. Naini Jaiseelan also into this debate. And Ms. Jaiseelan, from the judiciary to the activists to policymakers, Ms. Narayan did point out some measures were taken, some were debated, some have been put in place off and on, but little has improved. And like she's pointing out there, there are some issues there on implementation. Do you believe execution is the real problem, or lack of coordination, or the arbitrary manner in which some piecemeal solutions are being put in place? What would you put your finger on, Ms. Jaiseelan?
There is no doubt that air pollution has tremendous effects on production as well as productivity. I think there is no dispute on that. Now, China has drafted much tougher penalties for carbon emissions, plus a very strict emission regime and implementation. I think somewhere down the line, most of the pollution control boards in all over the country have not been able to implement the existing laws, plus there is a need to tighten the existing laws itself, especially with regard to thermal power plants. As Sunita has very rightly said, China has cleaned up its thermal power plants, and the good thing about the good thing about China is that in the Beijing-Tianjin area, the pollution levels have gone down as much as 33%, with a lot of emphasis on reducing the dependency on fossil fuels, especially coal from thermal power plants. And unless we do that, one of the major causes will continue. We have to have stricter implementation for the thermal power plants, for vehicular pollution, stricter checkings, stricter implementation, and better public transport and last mile and first mile connectivity. And unless we are able to do that, we will not be able to win the war on pollution. So it's really stricter emission standards plus much more stricter implementation of the existing laws.
Absolutely, and I think China's achieved something which is absolutely remarkable. There are only 4 Chinese cities that are actually in the top 20 most polluted cities, and that number has gone down considerably. But Sunita Narayan, coming back to you, a lot of experts out there, and the views that we've got on the panel so far feel that there needs to be a coordinated action to tackle air pollution. And like you rightly said there, you alluded to it tangentially, that the focus has perhaps been too Delhi-centric. The ban on unclean fuel, shutting down coal-based power plants, shifting industry was all done for the national capital. Has the time come for the centre and the state governments to sit together, huddle, chalk out a long-term strategy that includes not just the NCR but all concerned? I mean, the moot question is, why can't we have one country, one pollution policy?
No, absolutely. I think that is the most important thing that the WHO report has pointed to, that this is not a Delhi problem itself. But please understand that the Delhi focus has only been because, yes, the pollution is very high, but it's also a fact that the Bhurilal committee, the committee I'm a member of, we have a mandate for Delhi and NCR. So we have been pushing here. But every time the court has asked the government to come up with a national plan, They have only been dragging their feet on it. The fact is, we know what is to be done, but we need to have much stricter action and we need to have enforcement. And I think this is really where the pan-India nature needs to now come in. But as I said earlier, it's about cleaner fuel, which means it's about gas, it's about strict implementation of emission standards in thermal power plants, in industry. It's about bringing in BS6 fuel across India. It's about making sure that you have a vehicle transformation so that the old vehicles are off the road or have retrofits in some way, and that's really a pan-India thing. You need public transport because you need to have car restraint, but you also need to ban pet coke. I mean, when we brought to the Supreme Court the fact that we needed an import ban on pet coke, China has banned the import of pet coke. You look at the response of the Ministry of Commerce. It is basically arguing that it will not be WTO compliant and it has to therefore buy all the junk of America and Saudi Arabia and China because it needs to pollute India. I mean, what kind of a response are we getting? So I think you really need to understand that we need to understand, and our government needs to understand, that I think it has understood that air pollution is a problem, but as yet its actions are too little, too late, and there's just too much resistance on taking the tough, aggressive actions that we need to do in the interests of clean air.
Oh, absolutely. And which is why I'm going to go back to the politicians and Anila Singh very quickly. Some of the most polluted cities are in the Indo-Gangetic plains. So states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal need to be further sensitized. Do you think there is a lack of synergy between the center and the state on this very issue? I mean, why is it that the Indo-Gangetic plain is perhaps the most polluted? Look at the number of cities and look at the centers that also don't exist. Miss Singh?
Yeah, Supriya, am I audible?
Sure, go ahead, ma'am. Audible. I can hear you.
Am I audible?
Audible, go ahead, I can hear you.
All right.
Yes, you're audible, go ahead.
Supriya, to start, all right, because in between I was not able to hear what you were saying, but see, what Sunita mentioned right now, I totally agree with her. Stringent steps should be taken, and if you remember when NDA government was formed in the center, and Mr. Nitin Gadkari, he really wanted to take some very tough steps regarding the vehicles and all. And so much of hue and cry was made by the opposition. So the role of the opposition party should be in a very positive way when some strong steps are being taken by the government. They start finding opportunity in it. They want to fructify the situation for their vote bank policy. So this is something very unfortunate which happens in our country. And as I told you that like nobody can forget 2015 Paris summit. There Modi ji said that yes, economic development is directly related to environment protection. So he understands the importance that the country should be pollution free. And definitely, as I told you, that government is taking so many steps, like Sunita mentioned, that what all should be done, and those steps are being taken. Government is doing its bit, but like in 4 years time, whatever the central government has done, and if I talk about I come from Uttar Pradesh, and if you talk about whether Kanpur or Varanasi or Lucknow, Allahabad, definitely just you mentioned about Indo-Gangetic area, that they are high on pollution rate. Now in Uttar Pradesh, like BJP government is there, and there is a very good coordination in between center and the state government. So many steps are being taken by Yogi Adityanath ji as well to curb air pollution. But definitely it is not one day affair. Like in center, we have been there for 4 years, government has taken steps, and we need much more time, because the type of problem, a giant problem which is standing in front of us. It is not because of 4 years working. I mean, years together, when strict laws were not made, no action was taken against the culprits. When I talk about the industries or on the road, like there was a huge nexus in between the industrialists or the operators and the government, and whether I talk about the ruling government or the administrative machinery. So the PM has taken steps, and we are trying to cleanse the system and pollution, and to control pollution as well. So air cleansing, or I can say
I get the point that you're making.
Controlling and the system cleansing,
can I come in,
both are doing simultaneously.
I'm coming to you. I get your point. Ms. Singh, I get your larger point, but I think the question was, is there a lack of synergy? And I think it's important to tell our viewers here, Durgapur, Gorakhpur, Asansol, Siliguri, Bareilly, Ludhiana are amongst the most polluted cities which do not even have continuous air quality monitoring data that's made available to public. And just to put it in perspective here, India has 39 operating stations, China has 1500. That's the disparity we're looking at, but I'll come to that when I'm doing the China part of this debate. But Adil, I want you to come in. I think you want to make a point there, but I also have a question.
We are working
election
on that
manifestos
also,
of
Supriya.
parties, and yours included. Okay, 1 second. Adil, just to come to you, in election manifestos, big promises are made. We see loan waivers, we see free color televisions, unachievable promises they are made. Why don't political parties, why doesn't the Congress take the lead to include what you plan to do about tackling air pollution? Why doesn't air pollution ever feature in political campaigns? Is this not an important issue?
Well, Supriya ji, absolutely. You see in our 2019 manifesto, we'll deal with this pressing issue which affects the entire country. This is point number one. Point number two, I didn't want to make it a political issue, but I must show the mirror to the BJP spokesperson that from 2010 to 2013, only 2 cities figured in this list. Over the past 4 years, this number has come to 14. So obviously, there is something wrong in governmental policy. That's point number 2. Point number 3, another very interesting issue which was raised was of coordination. Today what you witness is that the centre is adopting a very recalcitrant position when it comes to the states, and it's a reality today that this government, the central government, is subverting institutions. So obviously there is a trust deficit vis-a-vis the centre and the state, and the cooperative federalism of that rhetoric which was propounded by the Prime Minister is of course fallen like a pack of cards. So obviously we need better coordination between the centre and the states. That's why the states of Punjab, Haryana and Delhi requested the Prime Minister to allocate 4,000 crore rupees for stubble management, but the BJP government at the centre didn't come forward. In such issues, it is incumbent on the central government to take the lead. Had you allocated 4,000 crore rupees, we could have found a lasting solution to the problem of stubble burning. So therefore, that takes me to the point that the policy and the budgetary support is clearly lacking today, and this is something which the central government must address. Now lastly, what I would like to urge the BJP is that we need to learn best practices from the Chinese. The Chinese have taken this issue on a war footing. They have really taken this to the logical conclusion. They've reduced the number of cities which figured in this list. Perhaps we need to follow that roadmap and adopt that and emulate that for our cities as well. So rhetoric will not help us find solution. We really need to translate the rhetoric into delivery, which is lacking, which is not just lacking on the environment front, but which is lacking on a host of other parameters.
Okay.
Supriya, I just want to make one statement.
Okay, sure thing.
Supriya, I just want to ask one thing from
I'll come back to you in just a moment.
That, just one thing, one thing.
Go ahead.
That,
Go ahead, ma'am.
All right. Karnataka elections are around the corner, and yes, Karnataka elections are around the corner, and 3-4 days back, Congress has released its manifesto. I just want to ask Adil ji that there is any mention of controlling pollution in Karnataka state? Has they made this as a manifesto point or not?
I'm just going to ask you a counter question, but I don't want to reduce this to political bickering of sorts. Okay, go ahead very quickly, because I want to take it back to the experts very quickly there. Adil.
Supriyaji, it is an admitted position that in the past 4 years, this government has gone to the extent of diluting environment laws, diluting forest laws to favor their crony capitalists. So it really doesn't behove the BJP to really question us. Please take the lead. You're in power at the center. We will fully support you. And reducing it to one state or the other will not help us find a solution.
He doesn't
Please,
have answer.
please come up with out-of-the-box solutions. Singing prayers. Let me reiterate. Singing prayers about the Prime Minister will not help us find a
You
solution.
have answered my question, Adil. You have answered my question.
Adil,
we know very well that how serious Congress is.
We have demonstrated by action. We have demonstrated by action.
And 1 second, please. Adil Singh Boparai and Anila Singh, I want to come back and steer this discussion. I see very clearly that politicians are very conscious of optics, and both of you have chosen to wear green, which is welcome. I like the fact that you've made an effort to wear green on a pollution debate. I really appreciate the effort.
Well, that's purely a coincidence.
I don't think this can be, this is too important an issue to be reduced to political bickering. But let me go across to Ms. Naini Jayasilan. Ms. Jayasilan, had it not been for Delhi activists, media, policy makers for sure, would have looked at the other way, since Kanpur, Gaya, Patna, Faridabad hardly feature in a larger national discourse. Are we, the people of India, also guilty of taking these things too lightly, since the effects of air pollution do not have an immediate impact? Is this also a failure on the part of the society at large? I mean, in spite of the Supreme Court induced ban on firecrackers in Delhi, people were unhappy, people were complaining, they were looking to break the ban by bursting crackers. Is sensitization of the Aam Aadmi, and all pun intended, also core to the battle against pollution? I mean, we've got people who are just so, people with such influence, people like a Chetan Bhagat, people, the Hindu activists talking about why should Hindu festivals be banned? I mean, this is about the air quality that we are breathing in. Is there also a failure on the part of the society at large who hasn't really taken cognizance as well?
I fully agree with this point, but the point is that maybe about 3-4 years ago, the sensitization levels were very poor. People were not even sensitized on this issue. And it's only recently that sensitization, at least on this issue, is becoming universal. People are realizing that the quality of air that they breathe is absolutely toxic. Society, of course, government is a part of society, and if we have to draft tougher laws and if we have to have stricter implementation, government has to take the lead. But society generally has to take the lead on so many fronts. For example, it's just reducing the dependency on fossil fuels. Why are we so dependent on fossil fuels? I'll give you a very small example, and that is sewage treatment plants. Forget about Delhi, in the entire NCR and probably in the entire country, are not able to utilize the methane that they generate from anaerobic digestion of the sewage. If a sewage treatment plant can get 20%, 30% of its energy from the sewage itself, then we definitely will reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. Why are we not decreasing our dependency on fossil fuels? Because incomplete combustion leads to soot, smoke and dust, leading to all kinds of air pollution problems. So we should have decentralized solutions, centralized solutions, but these are all issues which is a part of society as well as government. And I think everybody has to work together, because people have to realize that we're not going to win this war at all if we are going to continue as business as usual. On that, I think everybody agrees that business as usual is not going to get us anywhere, and unless we take drastic steps, both the government and people in society have to take adequate steps, so that we realize that our dependency on fossil fuels goes down.
No, absolutely. There is just no doubt about the fact that, this needs to be done by the society at large. But I'm sorry, Pallavi, I kept you waiting, but I'm going to come back to you. And, there's enough that's been said in this debate about China. But I think it's important to point out here that only 4 Chinese cities, Baoding, Hengshui, Shrinate and Anyang, are there in top 20 most polluted cities now. Beijing has had a remarkable improvement. Ms. Jayasilan made a reference to that. What do you attribute this remarkable feat achieved by China to?
So they've been tackling this for the last decade at least. 2008 was when Beijing hosted the Olympic Games, and in many ways it served as a kind of inflection point when it came to the fight against pollution in China. So it's been a full 10 years, and it's taken, war-part footings in many ways. They have curtailed vehicles, cars drastically. They have a license plate lottery, so that even if you buy a car, you can only get a license plate if you win a kind of lottery, which restricts the number of license plates that are allowed. If you own one car, you cannot actually have a second car. So each individual is restricted to the ownership of one car. They have cut down a lot of the coal plants and iron foundries that used to surround the city. So they've drastically clamped down on the industrial activity that used to occur around the city. They have coordinated with other cities like Hebei and Tianjin in the same airshed. And they have also given the local authorities, the environmental protection authorities, real teeth. They've given them the power to detain company bosses who don't complete environmental impact assessments. And they have removed the limits on the fines that firms can be subject to for breaching pollution quotas. The city of Beijing's Environmental Protection Bureau handed out fines that totaled something like $30 million for pollution law violations in 2015 alone. This is according to Chinese state media. I don't think that any Indian companies have really been hauled up for breaking pollution norms in India. There's no sort of a silver bullet. It's a hard, long slog, which has seen them tackling industrial pollution and vehicular pollution, and in many ways shift away from a sort of very coal-dependent economy into a more renewable, energy-centric economy. And at the same time put in pollution abatement equipment on the remaining coal and thermal power plants, which takes out up to 95% of the sulfur dioxides that are emitted. And this has been very helpful in China's fight against pollution.
Okay, very quickly, Pallavi, before I move any forward, I have to ask you, thanks for outlining the host of things that have been done, but what are the solutions that India needs to learn, especially from China, to tackle the crisis, particularly in the cities in the Indo-Gangetic belt? I mean, enough has been said about why this problem is so acute in places like UP or Bihar and West Bengal, but what sort of lessons can perhaps India be picking up from our neighbors right across?
I think we need very specific quantifiable targets, which we do not have at the moment. Under our new National Clean Air Action Plan, there has been no quantifiable target that has been put forth. But on the other hand, in China, for example, literally hundreds of cities have been asked to meet very quantifiable targets where the air quality index it meets either the good or excellent criteria, which means at 50 or 100. The air quality index is a mix of different pollutants. There could be a cap on nationwide coal consumption, which is something that China has done. It has done an early transition to Euro 5 standards for vehicles across the country, which is something that we should be doing. Pollution abatement technology on all power plants. They have them on 95% of their power plants. I think India has them on around 10%. So there's a huge scope for improvement over there. And of course, air quality monitoring as well. Air quality monitoring is available in well over 900 Chinese cities. And in India, it's still at only 300 cities. So we don't even have the very basic first step of information for all the cities. In India, it still tends to be way too focused on Delhi and a few other cities, rather when in fact, as I said, it's a huge regional problem.
You know, I have to end this discussion in the next 3 minutes, so I'm going to urge all my panelists to be brief so that I can cover quick ground here. And the last part of this discussion has to be about solutions. Anila Singh, let me begin with you. Some of the solutions like clean energy for trucks, limiting emission norms for construction sites, shifting to clean power generation will take time and will be hugely unpopular in terms of growth, job losses, particularly affecting the poor masses. But are we as a country prepared to pay a heavy price to reclaim blue skies and save the future of not just ourselves, our children and the generations beyond us?
Supriya, to start with, it won't be fair if we compare India with China. India is a democratic country and China is a communist country. So, the climate, the work climate here and there is totally different. So, we can't compare. We know very well, we can take example of this Diwali only. When Supreme Court had asked that, rather asked, I can say, about the crackers, that people should not fire crackers and all, what type of response has come? And especially if I talk about the opposition parties here. So, definitely we can't compare the two countries, but presently NDA government is doing its best, and all the states having BJP government in them, they are doing a fabulous job with the coordination in center. So, definitely whether it is the problem of stubble burning or about the industries or about the dust problem or about the traffic jam problem, about the old vehicles problem or alternative fuel solution, on all aspects government is working, and it is going to take little time to get the results.
Okay.
But at the same time, I can only request and say that the air pollution, or I can say the pollution, should not be politicized, and everybody should contribute and help in getting our country cleaner.
Okay. Okay, Anila Singh, okay, this shouldn't be politicized, but Adil Boparai, very quickly, and please make it brief, because I will take a quick closing comment from Naini Jasilan then. The solutions to check air pollution perhaps range from time-bound manner implementation to punitive action against local governments, implementing authorities and all of that, and industry. Do politicians have the appetite, the stomach to go ahead and do something as unpopular as that?
Well, Supriya ji, the issue is very serious today, and I think that because of air pollution, the kind of health risks and hazards which it poses today, so therefore there is a need for punitive action. I agree with you on that. But having said this, what you need is better execution of laws. You need to involve experts like Sunita Narayan ji in a more wholesome way to find solutions, and also address the issue of construction dust in tier 1 cities, because this is also a major contributing factor. And just to correct Ms. Anila Singh, it's actually the BJP ruled cities and BJP ruled states which are worst performing. So therefore, please do not politicize this. And I'm again repeating this at the cost of repetition. Move beyond rhetoric to delivery. How long will you blame the opposition? You've been in power for 4 years. Let's find solutions, come up with a plan, and we'll support you.
Okay, very quickly, Ms. Naini Jaisil, and then giving you the last closing comment here on the show. I do want to go back to the quintessential question which remains: how do you balance India's development, India's growth aspirations, India's needs to create jobs with environment concerns? I mean, how does one find that balance? Is that balance going to always elude us? Is that achievable? How do we go about it?
I don't think the balance is unachievable at all, we need to enforce stricter laws. If you have to ask me for solutions, I would say thermal power plants are one of the major solutions. Better fly ash management. China has cleaned up its act on thermal power plants. We should be able to do that pretty soon with better quality electrostatic precipitators, a better quality pollution equipment. Transport emissions, promoting clean energy in every industry. We have to promote clean energy. Think of out of the box solutions. There are some centralized solutions, there are some decentralized energy solutions. Take them fast. Last of all, biomass burning is also a very important factor. That also has to be controlled. So, if we are able to do all this, I don't think that the task is so bad, it's so difficult that we won't be able to achieve it. The war is begun, we should be able to win this war. Thank you.
And I do keep my fingers crossed of how each one of us needs to be a contributor, each one of us needs to be a warrior to win this battle against pollution, because this isn't just about us, this is about our children, this is about the world that we want to leave behind them. And just to put it in perspective, outdoor air pollution could cause 6 to 9 million premature deaths by 2060. That's 4 times of what it did in 2010. And that's a figure that I want to leave our viewers with, because that is thought to ponder over. The next time you take a car where you could walk, the next time you can opt for public transport, the next time industry decides to undermine environment and go in for development, I think these are questions that should be raised. These are questions that are important. India that wants to develop, India that wants to lead the world in this century cannot at any cost have 14 cities in a list of top 15 polluting cities in the world. And I think there are lessons to be learned closer home from China. There is every reason to believe that democracy is the only way for us, but there are lessons still to be learned from China and how they've won over pollution levels and have achieved high rates of growth. But thank you very much, this wonderful panel, Naini Jarsilan, Sunita Narayan, Ms. Anila Singh, Adil Singh Bopara and Pallavi Iyer for joining us right here on the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather, but up next is Top 10 at 10 with Tanya Bhardwaj.